These are the millions of Americans walking into retirement, holding something most people will never see again, which is a real pension. If you're one of them, your retirement math doesn't just look a little different. It operates on a completely separate set of rules. The 4% rule, the 25 times your expenses target, the panic about needing $1 million saved or you're doomed. Almost all of that advice was built for people without a pension. Today, we're breaking down how a pension actually changes the math, what yours is worth in real dollars, the 3 decisions that can quietly make or break your retirement, and one law signed in January 2025 that handed tens of thousands of dollars back to a specific group of pension holders. Let's start with how rare you actually are at this point in American history. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics National Compensation Survey from March 2025, only 18% of all civilian workers in the country participate in a pension plan, and in the private sector, that number collapses to just 9%. Public sector workers are where pensions still live. Your teachers, firefighters, police officers, and state employees, with 74% of state and local government workers covered by a pension. Added up, and roughly 26 million American workers still have access to a true defined benefit pension, which sounds like a lot until you see the trajectory. Pensions used to be the default option in America. Back in the early 1980s, defined benefit plans covered about 85% of private sector employees who had any retirement coverage at all, and that dominance didn't last. Between 1980 and 2008, private sector participation in pensions fell from 38% all the way down to 20%, and the decline kept going from there. Lockheed Martin announced its pension freeze, with pay-based benefits frozen on January 1st, 2016, followed by service-based benefits on January 1st, 2020. Boeing froze the pensions of more than 68,000 non-union employees back in 2014. Here's the statistic that should really sit with you. Of the workers still in private sector pension plans as of 2024, 43% are in plans closed to new entrants, which means if you have one, you're not just rare, you're holding something that's actively going extinct. This is where the math gets genuinely interesting. The standard playbook for someone without a pension is the 4% rule, where you add up your investments, withdraw 4% in your first year of retirement, and adjust for inflation each year after that, with the goal that your money lasts roughly 30 years. Flip that equation upside down, and you get the famous 25 times rule, meaning you need 25 times your annual expenses saved before you can comfortably retire. Watch what happens when a pension enters the picture, because the numbers move dramatically. Picture someone who needs $60,000 a year to live on in retirement. Without any pension, using the 4% rule, that person needs $1.5 million saved up, full stop. Layer in Social Security next, where the Social Security Administration estimates the average monthly benefit for all retired workers in January 2026 lands at $2,071 after the 2.8% cost of living adjustment. That works out to roughly $24,852 a year, which means the gap drops to around $35,000, and the required nest egg falls to about $875,000. Now, add a pension on top. Pension Right Center data shows the median federal government pension paid $33,310 a year in 2024. The median state or local government pension paid $24,930, and military pensions came in at $26,310. Say yours pays $25,000 annually. The income gap just shrank from $35,000 to $10,000, and the savings target collapsed from $875,000 down to roughly $250,000. That's the entire point of this video. A pension doesn't just supplement your retirement. It cuts the amount of money you need saved by hundreds of thousands of dollars. That brings us to the question almost no pensioner can answer accurately, which is what your pension is actually worth in lump sum terms. Financial planners use a common rule of thumb where you take your annual pension and multiply it by about 25 to get its rough equivalent value. A $30,000 a year pension functions like roughly $750,000 in retirement savings, and a $40,000 pension lands you somewhere around $1 million in equivalent assets. Some practitioners prefer a 20 times multiplier, or they run a more precise present value calculation using a discount rate between 4% and 6%. But the headline doesn't change. Your pension is very likely the single most valuable asset you own, and most pensioners dramatically underestimate it. There's a second piece to this that changes how you should be investing the rest of your money, which is the idea of treating your pension as the bond portion of your portfolio. The logic goes like this. If you've already got guaranteed income arriving every month for life, you can afford to take more risk with the investment sitting in your 401k or IRA. Instead of running a cautious 50-50 stock bond split, you might be able to comfortably hold 70-30, or even more aggressive than that. The analogy isn't perfect because a pension can't be sold, can't be passed to your kids the same way, and most private pensions don't include any inflation adjustment, but the underlying logic still holds up. Which brings us to the decisions you actually have to make, the kind that can permanently make or break your retirement. Decision 1 is lump sum or monthly annuity. Some plans will offer you a one-time payout instead of monthly checks for life, and Charles Schwab frames the choice simply, it comes down to how much you value certainty and protection. A useful benchmark here is the 6% rule, which says if your annual pension payout equals 6% or more of the lump sum being offered, the annuity is usually the better deal, and if it's well below 6%, the lump sum starts looking more competitive. The lump sum gives you flexibility, investment control, and an asset to leave behind, while the annuity gives you a paycheck for life and protection against outliving your money. Decision 2 is single life versus joint and survivor. A single life annuity pays you the highest monthly amount possible, but the moment you die, those payments stop completely, which can be financially devastating if you have a spouse. The joint and survivor option gives you a smaller monthly check, but it continues paying, often 50% or 100% to your surviving spouse for the rest of their life. Federal law generally requires your spouse to consent in writing if you want to waive the joint and survivor option. And there's a real reason that rule exists, because choosing wrong here has bankrupted surviving spouses. Decision 3 is one most people never think about, which is what happens if your company's pension plan actually fails. That's where the PBGC comes in, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which insures private sector single-employer pension plans. During fiscal year 2025, the PBGC paid out over $6.4 billion in benefits to nearly 926,000 retirees in plans it had taken over as trustee. For 2026, the maximum guaranteed benefit for a 65-year-old retiree taking a straight life annuity sits at $7,789.77 per month. So if your pension fails, you're not left with nothing, but if your benefit was higher than that maximum, you could end up taking a haircut. And the guarantee gets reduced further for younger retirees and for anyone choosing a joint and survivor option. Here's the development a lot of pension holders completely missed. On January 5th, 2025, the Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law, and it eliminated two provisions called the Windfall Elimination Provision and the Government Pension Offset. For decades, those rules reduced Social Security benefits for people who received pensions from work not covered by Social Security, which meant a lot of state and local government workers, teachers in certain states, firefighters, and police officers were getting their Social Security checks cut specifically because they also held a public pension. As of 2025, those reductions are gone, which means if you're a public sector retiree with a pension, your Social Security benefit is no longer being offset by that pension. And that single change rewrites the retirement math for millions of people in a very tangible way. Before anyone celebrates too hard, here's the cold water you need to hear. Most private sector pensions do not include automatic cost of living adjustments, which means inflation will quietly erode your purchasing power year after year across a 20 or 30-year retirement. Many public sector pensions do include some form of COLA, but plenty of those have been modified, capped, or scaled back since 2008. Social Security adjusts every year, while your private pension almost certainly does not. So if your pension pays $40,000 a year today, in 20 years, that same check might only buy you what $22,000 buys today. And that's the single biggest risk most pension retirees ignore. Let's pull all of this together. If you're retiring with a pension, the standard retirement advice doesn't actually apply to you. Your real savings target sits much lower than the headlines suggest because your guaranteed income, meaning Social Security plus your pension, covers a much larger share of your expenses. Your pension itself is likely worth somewhere between 20 and 25 times its annual payout in equivalent assets, which makes it probably the most valuable thing you own. You can usually afford to invest the rest of your portfolio more aggressively than the average retiree, but only if you nail 3 decisions: lump sum versus annuity, single life versus joint and survivor, and how to protect yourself against inflation, slowly eating your fixed pension over time. If you spent your career in a public sector job, the January 2025 repeal of the WEP and GPO may have just delivered you a meaningfully larger Social Security check on top of everything else. A pension doesn't just shift your retirement math, it changes the entire framework you should be using to plan in the first place. The people who understand that retire with a level of security almost nobody else in America gets to experience anymore, while the people who don't understand it leave hundreds of thousands of dollars of value sitting on the table. Or worse, get one of those 3 decisions wrong and pay for that mistake for the rest of their lives. If you've got a pension, treat it like the rare and valuable thing it actually is, because in another 20 years, your grandkids probably won't even know what one was.